Aqui, ó, parte 1.
Hã?
Ah, fechei, tô nem aí. Pera aí. Velocidade 2. Ah, tá até o like aqui, meu. Legenda só em inglês, tá bom. Tá bom o som aí pra vocês?
God of War was
Dá medo,
released
né, Ronald?
22nd of March 2005 on the PlayStation 2. In it, you play as Kratos, a mortal forsaken by the gods in a grim ancient Greek setting. Your objective is to defeat Ares, the god of war, both because you are on a mission by Athena, but even more importantly,
Pera aí.
because you're thirsty.
Deixa eu mudar o título da live aqui. Vou colocar que eu tô jogando God só pra ganhar follow. KKKKK. React, história de speed. Ai, caiu o microfone. Grande God of Fine Boom.
For vengeance.
Hã?
Aside the violent hack-and-slash combat, the game features a bit of exploration as well as puzzles
Acho
to
que não,
balance
pescador.
things out.
Tem um trem atrapalhando pra ver a legenda? Que trem? Vocês conseguem me dizer? Deu AD? Ô porra, eu espero então. Quando der AD... Ah, depois eu falo, né? Os caras não vão ouvir agora. Ai, ai. Tem alguma coisa trabalhando a legenda aí pra vocês, mano? Não tá um AD, né, Logote? Vocês voltaram do AD já? Fala aí pra mim. Já voltaram? Já voltaram? Versão mais completa? Então tá bom. Ah, bom. Voltaram? Quando for TAD, vocês avisam aí que eu pauso, tá? Dá pra ver a legenda de boa, mano? Não consigo ver aqui pelo OBS. Ver aqui. É, eu acho que dá pra ver.
Around 5 months after the game's launch, a
Ele ganhou,
discussion
filho.
thread about it was started at the speedrunning-focused website Speed Demos Archive.
Posso mover pra cá.
From that initial spark, things progressed fairly quickly. Several people showed interest in speedrunning the game, and among these early names, one stood out from the rest. It was Prism.
Prism!
Prism quickly started working on a segmented run that was played on the hardest difficulty, called the God mode. After several weeks of steady progress, he encountered a setback. He lost all of his recorded segments when changing hard drives. But he wasn't discouraged. He started again from the beginning almost immediately, and in fact saw the whole ordeal as an opportunity to improve the times of his first attempt. On 1st of October 2005, Prism was finished.
Vai lá, Marte.
The run
Tamo
was
junto,
made
mano.
in
Obrigado pela raid
17
aí.
segments, with a final in-game time of 2:49:51. Back then, people timed God of War runs exclusively using the in-game timer, and the final point of each run was the final save point on Olympus after beating the final boss. The in-game timer in God of War is generally reliable, but not without its own odd quirks. Most importantly, retrying from last checkpoint reverts the in-game timer back to what it was at the start of the checkpoints. This means that, for instance, you could get dozens of game overs in your segment due to sloppy playing, but your final time wouldn't become any worse for it. However, the early runners intentionally discouraged abusing the in-game timer in this way, opting to do clean segments without unnecessary retrying or deaths. Prism declined submitting his run to Speed Demos Archive, but the run can still be watched nowadays, since it was uploaded to archive.org.
Pera, ele fez no Very Hard a run? Ele tava falando de God Mode ali, não sei se me perdi no caminho. Eu posso testar, né, Ângelo? Eu tenho o DMC1 aqui no PS2, mano. Eu posso testar.
God of War is essentially a linear experience. In the early game, Kratos has to fight his way through the Aegean Sea, the war-torn Athens, and the outlying desert to reach Pandora's Temple. People didn't know many notable speedrun exploits for God of War in 2005, and so the run was mostly about playing the game through as cleanly as possible. The early bosses took a while to beat, since Kratos' attack power was lowered on God mode. Meanwhile, Kratos himself took extra damage. Only a few hits could
Big, essa run de 2005 que é bem parecida com a run que ainda é hoje, né, mano?
be
Pelo menos esse
fatal.
comecinho aqui.
Especially Hydra 2 seemed to be very
É,
hardy,
o
since
Naruto.
you still didn't have any magics to complement your offense at this point. On God mode, you could only hope that the Hydra attempted grabbing Kratos as often as possible, since winning the minigame dealt a lot of damage to the boss. Prism did not have a perfect luck in this regard. You could speed up
no
the
very hard, né? Eu tô
precarious
esquecendo que é no very
balancing
hard.
beam sections by jumping past them instead of just walking. Prism did this in his run, but only here and there.
Mano, esse
Near
stretch aí
the
dá
end
medo
of
de pular,
Aegean
velho.
Sea,
Vai
Kratos
rapidinho.
received the game's first magic, Poseidon's Rage. Upon casting, it made Kratos invincible for a moment while dealing good damage to anything in the immediate vicinity. The final boss of Aegean Sea was two smaller Hydra heads followed by the big Hydra. The smaller Hydra heads could drop blue orbs, which refilled Kratos' magic bar, but this couldn't be relied on. It seems Prism had some bad luck with them, forcing him to be pretty conservative with magic. He also spent some time being pulled back and forth between the Hydra heads, which made the fight take longer than it could have. The developers placed the big Hydra just slightly out of reach of Kratos' attacks for most of the fights. You had to damage it with counter-attacks, starting your own combo after the boss tries to take a bite out of Kratos. Prism used magic whenever possible while delivering some of Kratos' most damaging combos between each casting. Overall, the entire boss fight took him around 4 minutes to complete.
Mano,
Red Orb routing
peraí,
plays a
depois eu
big
pauso.
role in God of War speedruns. Red Orbs is the game's form of currency, the main way Kratos upgrades his own arsenal.
dá pra ver que esse vídeo é bom. E ele explica speedrun até pra quem não conhece o jogo, mano. Até pra quem não manja nada do jogo, nunca viu o jogo. Dá pra entender bem esse vídeo aqui, velho. Eu tenho do DMC3 atualmente, o Neruand. Eu tenho o DMC3, já tive do God of War 1 e 2.
Learning new moves.
O do God, os caras trepam na run por causa das Red Orbs, mano. Dá muito Red Orb. E o cara tá no Very Hard, então Red Orb é mais do que essencial, cara. Tô curtindo, Big.
Gaining more power in the process. Prism got a bunch of orbs early on by doing the sex minigame, a solid tactic that is used in runs to this day. Prism focused on upgrading Kratos' main weapon, Blades of Chaos, in his run. He got the weapon to level 2 at the start of Gates of Athens, then proceeded to fight Medusa using both the upgraded blades as well as a few castings of Poseidon's Rage.
Depende de
It wasn't
vocês,
a
filho.
perfect fight by any means. Kratos took some damage and Medusa escaped his combos a few times too.
Do NG mais sim, ô.
As a reward for
Né?
defeating Medusa, Kratos was awarded a new magic, Medusa's Gaze. This allowed Kratos to freeze and shatter individual enemies to insta-kill them. A small shortcut was used at the climbing section afterwards. Kratos could drop off a climbing wall early if you made him bump into enemies while leaping over a gap.
Então, filho, os caras perdem tempo, mas é um tempo que vale a pena perder, cara. Porque é muita orb que dá naquele sex minigame. E não é qualquer baú de Red Orb que aumenta a quantidade de orbs no Very Hard. Tem baú de orb que você pega e não aumenta nada, cara. Em 2005 os caras já usavam isso daqui, esse pulo
Leap
no
wall
inimigo.
early if you made him bump into enemies while
Daqui.
leaping over a
Isso
gap.
aqui não é muito difícil de descobrir. Mas é da hora que os caras já usavam
This
isso
type
daí.
of a tactic would be used again.
Porque 2005 é lançamento do God 1, então Pouco depois do lançamento, os caras já estavam fazendo essas runs da hora aí,
and
velho.
later in the Challenge of Atlas climbing section. Some ways into Athens, Kratos received the third magic, Zeus's Fury. It was a type of long-range projectile attack, mostly helpful against archers or other smaller enemies in the distance. The first magic Prism decided to upgrade was Medusa's Gaze, getting it to level 2 in the Temple of the Oracle, a little less than a third into the game. One early method for
Não usar os
farming red orbs
mechanics aqui,
quickly
hein?
was using Medusa's Gaze to shatter endlessly spawning harpies at the Temple of the Oracle. Each time a harpy was shattered, Kratos would get a plus 30 red orb bonus, allowing him to accumulate orbs fairly quick.
Eu acho que nessa parte no Very Hard, eu não sei como os caras fazem a run hoje em dia, mas acho que até vale a pena um pouco você pegar as orbes que dá aqui. É pra tá ficando com a Medusa. Seria legal, né, se o Aka falasse de mim, né? Porque eu descobri muito stretch também, né? Mas tudo bem.
Kratos
sei,
could
filho.
also collect Gorgon Eyes and Phoenix Feathers from chests around the game world to extend his health and magic meters. Since this was the hardest difficulty, Prism wanted a maxed out Kratos to be able to survive more than a few hits and also cast some extra
Bibi.
magic, and so he made sure to pick up 18 of both Ice and Feathers.
Tudo bem que esse N% aqui é quase que um glitchless, né? Porque os caras ainda não descobriram todos os glitches, né? Que tem
As
hoje.
far as fast navigation went, Kratos could chain together
Não,
rolls
filho.
and later on Hermes Rush to do so-called roll rushing. These two movement techniques speeded up the gameplay by quite a lot, while being pretty fun to
Nossa, olha como era
execute
feito,
too,
ombrado.
especially
Mano.
with the roll rush. Just chain the two actions together and watch Kratos go.
Eles não cancelavam com X, eles cancelavam com
Prism
quadrado ainda o
managed to
rolamento.
upgrade the Blades of Chaos to level 3 before even leaving Athens. Surprisingly, he decided to upgrade the often overlooked Zeus's Fury to use
Ele
against
upou
the
os
Desert
Zeus?
Sirens.
Tá bom, Big. Ah, Brunco.
The final boss of the desert was a fight against multiple sirens. Prism stoned as many of them as he could before switching over to melee attacks, which sadly were somewhat ineffectual in this situation. The game's second act took place in Pandora's temple, where Kratos had to best 3 trap-filled gauntlets, Challenge of Atlas, Poseidon and Hades. Here, Kratos received a secondary weapon called Blade of Artemis, a more unwieldy yet powerful weapon compared to Blades of Chaos, but Prism barely found a use for it in his run. Prism played some parts in Challenge of Atlas very safe. One good example of this were the conveyor belts with crushers, as well as the rope fight in the underground area. Prism upgraded Poseidon's Rage to...
Mano, eu não vi a run inteira desse cara, mas ele mata os inimigos sem a Artemis? Ele mata com a Blade? Tipo, se ele for matar os inimigos com magia, tudo bem. Mas quando acabar a magia, se ele usar as Blades do Caos, em vez de usar a Artemis, aí é meio meme, cara. Porque, tipo, tá na cara que a Artemis dá muito mais dano que as Blades. Não precisa nem jogar muito pra saber disso. Eu achei que esse cara podia ter sido... Se esse cara fosse um pouquinho mais ligado, acho que ele podia ter usado, mano. Ninguém sabia que a Artemis era boa, mas tá na cara que é boa.
level 2 in the middle of Challenge of Atlas, around the halfway point of the game, and finally maxed it out in Challenge of Hades. Level 3 Poseidon's Rage was a very effective damage dealing magic with a large range, so from that point on, Prism often used it to take out large crowds of enemies quickly. According to...
Então, Big, eu acho que isso daí que você falou é verdade. Aposto que até 2016 ninguém sabia que o martelo no God 2 era bom. Isso é verdade, porque... A Artemis também é uma arma lenta, né? Só que ela dá muito hit por segundo. Tipo, só o ataque do R1 dela dá muito hit por segundo. E o martelo do God 2, ele só tem 2 hits no triângulo, né? Então acho que não usavam muito por causa disso. E também porque não sabiam cancelar a animação dele, né? Depois você dá as 2 marteladas e pega o arco. É o arco, né? Você dá essa cancelada nele. Aí acho que não usava muito o martelo por causa disso.
To Prism's
não sabia
own words,
cancelar.
there were many sections in the later half of the game he wasn't happy with. He wanted to get some levels, such as Challenge of Hades, done as quickly as possible. He took his time at the Blades of Hades platforming section, which allegedly gave him some trouble. The boss fight of the level was Pandora's Guardian, a large armored minotaur. Prism dealt with it by mostly staying on ground level and using Poseidon's Rage to deal a lot of damage
Nossa, ele
quick.
não usou Artemis aí,
However,
né?
at the start of each phase, he
Nossa.
also stayed on the upper level for a while, using his currently level 4 Blades of Chaos to chip away at the boss's life bar.
Nossa, velho. Deve ter ficado uns 10 minutos no Minotauro.
Taking down the boss got
Nossa.
Kratos the game's final magic, Army of Hades, which was another wide-range damage-dealing attack. Huge attack power, but it was costly too. Much of the late game took place in Upper Pandora's Temple. Kratos had to pass through Cliffs of Madness and Architect's Tomb to finally reach Pandora's Box, a mystical artifact said to have the power to kill a god. Upgrading blades to maximum
Ele pegou as music keys também aqui. Deixou tudo no máximo do máximo.
level was very expensive, taking a whole 9,000 orbs. Prism went out of his way to pick up a lot of extra
Ele tá falando da N%, ô Pad. Esse daqui, no caso, é a primeira run de God. É a primeira, né, Big?
red orbs, and finally managed to get the blades to level 5 midway through Cliffs of Madness, in the last third of the game.
É, a primeira run
Having level
gravada,
5
né, no
blades
caso.
gave Kratos temporary infinite magic when activating his superpowered Rage of the Gods mode.
Isso que ele falou agora que eu ia falar, mano. O cara tem que pegar bastante orb também, pra ele pegar a Blade nível 5, porque quando ele usar o Rage dele, ele vai ter magia infinita enquanto o Rage estiver ativo, então isso vale muito a pena, cara. Principalmente nos clones, lá na frente.
A great help during the final fights of the game.
É, foi o que ele
The
falou.
game's finale dropped Kratos into Hades. He then had to jump, climb and fight his way out, and only then could the final battle against Ares begin. Once again, Prism dealt with platforming obstacles without unnecessary risks, taking his time at the rotating pillars. He upgraded Army of Hades to maximum level just in time before facing Ares.
Então, filho, eu posso fazer... Se tiver vídeo de história de run, eu posso fazer react. Agora, se for só react da run, pode ser também, né? Mas não sei se a galera vai curtir.
Ares was surprisingly fast to take down, thanks to all the upgrades Kratos had received on his journey.
Olha lá, magia
Even on
infinita.
God mode, all you needed to take him down quickly was maxed out Army of Hades that you could cast at will, as well as the powered up attacks Kratos acquired while raging.
É, Pad, é igual eu falei, a primeira run de Doom 2, do começo ao fim, lá em 95, era 1h10, 1h13, alguma coisa assim. Hoje em dia, 17 minutos, cara.
Clone fight afterwards was dealt with in a similar way. Tactical use of Rage allowed
Os
Kratos
clones
to
aí.
spam Army of Hades and Poseidon's Rage. Hugging your family gave a quick Rage refill, allowing Prism to use Rage 2 times total. Once at the start of the fight and once at the end.
A run durou quanto? Ele tinha falado antes
And
aí,
as for
2
the
horas e
Ares 2
pouco.
fight, there
Foi 2 horas
wasn't
e pouco?
really any trick to it. You just had to react to Ares' attacks in the right way and hope for a bit of good luck with his pattern.
2 horas e 50 e pouco, não foi?
And that was Prism's run of God of War.
É, pelo in-game time, né?
Overall, it wasn't completely
É
optimal.
bom ressaltar isso que foi pelo in-game time, tempo do jogo. Porque em tempo real, essa run do cara daria umas 5 horas. Daria umas 5 horas, fácil, mano.
But it was still a fairly good effort, being the first of its kind and also played on the hardest difficulty.
Daria
Less
fácil umas
than a
5
half a
horas.
year later, a new challenger appeared, Ball of Snow. In his first forum post, he revealed having done a test run which was already 15 minutes faster than Prism's run. And then, less than a month later, he had finished what would be the second recorded segmented run of God of War, with the final time of 2:16:23,
Olha lá, 2 e
a total
16.
improvement of 34 minutes over Prism.
34 minutos.
He had also done the run in 20 segments compared to Prism's 17, So how did he manage to save all that time?
1,45 Dogote, RTA e sem
Ball of Snow's
cutscene.
early game was already a good indication of what was to come. He got good luck with grabs in Hydra 2 and took down the beast 15 seconds faster compared to Prism.
Game time.
The big Hydra boss fight had several notable improvements. Ball of Snow used positioning well and cast magic more aggressively, preventing Kratos from being pulled around the map by the small Hydra head.
Se ele ficar nesse canto aqui, a Hydra do outro lado não consegue puxar ele. Ah, disso eu não sabia, mano. Olha, eu só fui saber negócio de 2005, 2006. Agora, velho. Ah, que interessante. Ah lá, Big.
When in need of a refill, he
Não sabia,
backtracked
não.
down the climbing wall and opened one extra magic chest. After all, the more you could cast Poseidon's Rage, the better.
Nossa, eu lembro, eu fazia isso daqui. Eu fazia isso de matar aquela Hydra, depois cair, pegar o baú, subir e matar a outra. Eu fazia
It
isso.
was possible to keep Big Hydra stun-locked with a certain combo, allowing much faster damage dealing.
Primeira speedrun da
In the
história.
end, Ball of Snow had dealt with the boss
sei.
1 minute faster than Prism had.
Mas provavelmente foi algum arcade
As
aí.
one big route difference, Ball of Snow decided to upgrade Poseidon's Rage first, instead of focusing on the blades. Ball of Snow got the magic to level 2 before facing Medusa, which made it possible to defeat her in mere seconds.
O cara conseguiu upar o Poseidon pro nível 2 antes da Medusa? Nossa, ele deve ter pego o baú pra porra. Não, Doom não foi a primeira speedrun da história, mas foi uma das que mais popularizou a speedrun. Mas não foi a primeira da história, não. Eu falo que foi jogo de arcade porque eu tinha visto uma vez, eu não sei se é totalmente verídico isso ou alguma coisa a ver assim, que as speedruns tinham sido popularizadas no mundo por causa do arcade, porque você pegava a ficha lá e jogava por tempo nas máquinas, nas locadoras, essas coisas assim. E aí tu tinha que tentar zerar o jogo o mais rápido possível até antes que acabasse o tempo pra você pegar outra ficha, tá ligado? Aí foi chamando de speedrun isso daí. Foi alguma coisa assim, mano. Faz muito tempo que eu fiz. Nossa, não lembro, Big.
Ball of Snow's gameplay was generally more optimized and precise compared to Prism. One example of this was in the Athens town square, where being more efficient with magic allowed stoning all of the Cyclops enemies instead of having to fight fair and square. Besides that, the overall navigation, including the quick rolling, was executed more tightly.
Olha o rolamento todo reto.
There was a new shortcut used to skip a part of the balancing beams inside the Temple of the Oracle.
Olá, já tinham feito Mechanics antes que eu. Não! Não fui o criador da Mechanics. Não!
Ball of Snow upgraded Poseidon's Rage to level 3 before heading off to the Desert of Lost Souls. Maxed out Poseidon's Rage was
Nossa, que
simply
apelação,
so
nível
powerful
3
that
aí,
it
olha.
made short work of most fights in the early game, resulting in a major time save. Like Prism did in his run, Ball of Snow also collected all the Phoenix Feathers and Gorgon Eyes to get full magic and health bars for Kratos. And also like Prism, Ball of Snow didn't find much use for Blade of Artemis.
Também não?
In his upgrading route, he focused exclusively on Blades of Chaos, all the way from the start of Pandora's Temple to the end of Challenge of Hades.
Deve ser. Eles usam mais a Blade pra matar os inimigos em vez da Artemis, porque a Blade ganha mais destaque, né, upando, né, Big? Pô, Blade nível 4 e nível 5 deve ser bem mais forte do que uma Artemis nível 1, né? Apesar de ser, sei lá, dar menos hit por segundo do que a Artemis.
Saved, thanks to the game's first legitimate sequence break. It was possible to skip a maze in Challenge of Hades by simply jumping over a locked door.
Nossa, mano, eu lembro quando eu fiz esse pulo aqui em cima dessa porta pela primeira vez sem querer, cara. Eu tinha recém pego o God 1 pro PS3. E aí eu não lembrava o que tinha que fazer nessa parte. Aí eu só fiquei pulando e usando L1X e de repente eu consegui atravessar aqui em cima, cara.
Jumping over a locked door. There was a small part without any collision, allowing Kratos to pass through without effort.
Primeiro
Ball of
skip
Snow
de
had
todos.
picked up this trick from game FAQs, from a poster whose name went unrecorded by history.
Mas pior que é fácil do... Foi fácil até do cara descobrir ali. Quer dizer, ele teve que fuçar muito no jogo pra descobrir isso, né? Mas fuçando um pouquinho dava pra
The
conseguir
Pandora's
achar.
Guardian fight had two significant differences. One
Ele
was
usou
that
rage aí.
Ball of Snow used rage in the middle of the fight. However, he remarked in his run comments that this was probably a mistake, since he later had to spend some time in Hades getting the meter back up again. The fight itself went otherwise
Ih, foi
well,
misclick no-
especially thanks to the use of a new glitch
rage.
that allowed skipping one of the Guardian's phases. You just had to operate the lock shooting device twice in a quick succession when the game wasn't expecting it.
Olha lá, ele vai
As
usar o
a side
skip.
effect, this left the Guardian half-armored instead of unarmored for the final phase of the fight, but it was only a
glitch.
visual effect.
Nossa, ele ficou ali na frente. Era pra ele ficar ali na frente mesmo?
In Hades,
Mas tanto tempo
Ball
não
of Snow
faz?
got past the rotating spike pillars fairly quickly. He also upgraded Army of Hades to level 3 near the end of the level, slightly earlier than Prism did, which helped in subsequent fights. Ball of Snow did Ares pretty much the same way as Prism did. He used one new time-saving tactic in the clone fights. Letting Kratos' family get hurt more allowed you to hug them more as well, resulting in even more rage refills for Kratos.
Ah, ele fez a estratégia de
Getting rage
deixar a
back to full
família
again
levar dano
earlier
pra
in the
ele
fights made it possible
recuperar o
to
rage.
finish off the clones much faster.
Tem sim, enfim. Eu tava falando de speedrun de Doom, que é de MS-DOS.
Ball of Snow submitted his run to Speed Demo's archive, and after a brief process of verification, it was accepted. The run set a new standard for God of War speedrunning. The upgrading route was streamlined and clearly quite effective, at least judging by all the time that was saved. Meanwhile, the general quality of the gameplay had also been bumped up noticeably compared to Prism. Back in 2006, the run was simply a sight to behold. Now,
vi já,
the question was,
João, obrigado pelo
who
follow.
would emerge next to improve upon it? A few months later, Ball of Snow's run would gain the attention of the longtime God of War player and challenge runner, GodModeGod. He left a glowing review of Ball of Snow's run on archive.org, and in the summer of next year started a general God of War series speedrunning thread at the Ultimate God of War Union fan forum.
Ele vai explicar por que depois mudaram pra jogar no Easy, mano? É porque aí seria NG+, né? Porque essa categoria que eles estão falando é N% sem NG+, né? Porque no Very Hard não dá pra usar NG+. Vai, que bom.
A few weeks later, on a day like any other, a newcomer posted inside the thread. His name was Satvara. He
2007.
said that as a personal challenge, he had decided to do a speedrun of the game. Unlike Ball of Snow's run, it was done on the normal difficulty, and it also had the strangely low final time of 1:21:41, around 55 minutes faster than the existing record.
55 minutos.
Other posters were slightly surprised upon hearing this, but not surprised enough for Satvara. The
porque foi
amiable
outra
tone
dificuldade,
of the
né?
conversation quickly turned into something else.
I think it's time I laid my cards out on the table. I can't help but laugh at the fact that you guys are making time estimates based on a time that you know nothing about. A 1:21 is impossible, and both of you really have no idea how impossible it is. You could try, and you would never come close. At least, with what you know.
There was a
Check
colorful back and forth between GodModeGod and Satvara that went on for multiple posts. But soon Satvara started uploading his run in multiple parts.
AD? AD? Caraca, mano. 1:21 aí.